All right, Ashlyn. So this might be the first podcast episode I've done where I've had like another journalist and kind of
Are
like
we
a
going to get
narrator with
nerdy? Is
me.
that what you're saying?
Honestly, I'm fine with it. I think
Me
my
too.
audience is annoyed with how much I talk about, TV life, but they're going to get more of it today. But I wanted to bring you on specifically because I know that you specialize in just sales pages that really convert.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time, creating these lead magnets and doing all these things and making these amazing templates and workshops, but people aren't getting to them because of the sales page,
Yep.
you know? I mean,
And
what are
that
you
is
seeing out there? You're looking at them all the time.
that is like the magnum opus of your whole launch. That's where all of the messaging should live. I think a lot of people get intimidated by them, especially if it's like a long form page. No one's read I don't say no one. There's a very small percentile that's reading every word of a sales page. I think one thing you always have to remember is there's different buying styles and not everybody buys like you buy. Like I am it's probably a similar background to yours, just like I'm very much like, what are the facts? I'm not a big emotional that doesn't really move me, but oh my gosh, in an audience of visionaries, which is whom I typically market to, my audience eats that stuff up. And so I have to check my own self when I'm writing a sales page. So when you go to thinking about a sales page as being less of like one long form letter and more of a digital interactive, like library for you to pick out which pieces of it are the pieces that you need to read of the offer. I think it just distills it and makes it a lot more bite-sized to write and install.
And we've talked about buyer types in my podcast before, but I really
Mhm.
liked the way that you explained them. It was different, and I think
Yeah.
had just different terms than I've used. So can you
Yeah.
quickly kind of break those four buyer types down that should be represented on a sales page?
Yes, absolutely. I have like cutesy names for them, but it's essentially based off I think it's the whole bean, the brain system where there's like four quadrants essentially, and there's part of it is very analytical and rational focused, and part of it is very emotional. On the emotional side, you've got some people who really want to like they're the classic entrepreneur visionary. They're trying to see like how can they build something, how can they achieve their goals. And then you've got other people who are so people focused and they're just like all about the community. I don't know if you're familiar with Natalie Frank. I was teaching at a conference one time and she was in the audience and I was like, Natalie is like, she started the Rising Tide Society. And I was like, she is a like case study in that. Then on the rational side, you've got people who really want the numbers and you've got people who really want the plans. So if you can just think about this like whole brain model, and as long as your copy can cater to the needs of each of those four in your components, then you're headed in the right direction.
Nice. And that's the thing. Sales pages, I know you mentioned this earlier, but so many people assume that long form copy is dead and it's not really
Oh
a
my
big
gosh, yeah.
deal. And or the opposite happens where people, and I see this more with my clients, and I would love your
Mhm.
input on it, where somebody will write a really long sales page for the sake of it being long, but there's not
Mhm.
really any structure around it. And so
Mhm.
I do want to kind of dive into just the structure of a sales page, right? Like, how
Yes.
should you build it?
Yes, I love it. People still read long copy, they don't read boring copy. So and I've got receipts to prove too. Like they long form, and when we say we're talking about long form, to me that's like 5,000 words. 3 to 5,000 words is a long form sales page. You do not always have to have one, but like I know for your clients in your community, when you're talking about an offer that's 497 plus 997, 1997, whether it's a group program that you're running or a one-off course, it can behoove you to be able to have all of the information out there for all of your emails, like they're all driving to that one place. So when we think about the different pieces of it, I typically teach that there's 16 different psychological levers that you want to pull on this page. And it's going to take somebody, just like an attorney steps up on like everybody's favorite, whatever your insert attorney show or John Grisham book, they're going to step up there and they're going to state their case and they're arguing well why you should consider their offer. What you also need to do there is then present the other sides. You are going to present evidence. You're also going to poke holes in your own argument. If you can do that before your audience does, ding, 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 that is so important. And so including that kind of language on a sales page is great too. I like the cursor to get to about 1/3 to possibly one halfway. halfway mark down on the page before the offer comes in. So that first third, you're really trying to show empathy to your person. You're trying to explain, hey, I get where you are. You also want, I always say you need to have an I moment in there, an interesting data point, because a lot of us, even if we're rational buyers, we're going to purchase with our emotions first, even if we don't realize it. But the rational part of our brain is like, but is this a good idea? I don't know. And so if you can include some sort of data point or nugget or factoid that helps them understand, yes, you're tracking in the right direction. This is a good point. Keep going. And then you bring in your solution. That can be helpful. I'll say one other thing. I talk to my students and my members inside the Copy Bar Collective a lot about this. This is kind of like copywriting 2.0, but on a sales page, what you want to do is sell the solution, and then your offer is just a vehicle to get to the solution. So if you can present the container of your offer, especially, again, your audience is like perfect for it because you guys you don't even realize it. You have like curriculum and like IP floating around in your head. You have a methodology that you do and you execute over and over again. Sell me on that. And then I get that by means of your one-on-one program or your group program or whatever it is.
So going back on a few of those, just to highlight, reiterate. So when you said, don't bring your offer in until the cursor is halfway, you're talking about like the what's included section, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm a fan of in the hero section, sometimes like the name of the offer up there at the top, and they can click that CTA button up there would drive straight to what we call the stack, where they can see everything that's inside and the price points and all that kind of stuff. But I sometimes don't even bring in what the solution or the offer even is. I want them swimming in the sea of like, wow, is Ashlyn in here? Is Taeler reading my journal? Like, this is exactly how I feel. That's exactly what's going on in my life. And I don't want them to preemptively diagnose if they need the offer or not, because I want them to see they're bleeding. And then I'm going to bring in the offer later. Does that answer your question?
No, totally. And I agree. I just want to reiterate that because I know that when people are listening to this, they're going to be like, wait, so I don't mention anything. It's like, no, just don't talk about the features yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're saying, like, when I'm saying that 1/3 through, that's when you have and that's exactly why I created the Copy Bar Collective membership. Like you want a mic drop thud, exciting moment on your sales page. And I don't want you to dilute that because you've like woven it in there before. Like that needs to be a really fun part of the copy and the messaging. That's like, stop looking. I figured out something. Here it is.
One of my favorite things to do is write sales pages, and I know everyone's going to be like, oh, gross.
You're one of those people.
The amount of people though that are like, hey, who did your sales page? Because I wanted to like hire somebody. I'm like, well, me. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I don't want to outsource that. That's like the one thing with my voice.
That's
one
awesome.
day maybe,
Good
but not yet. But I know that's not normal. Like I think you and I are weird, like, and that's okay. I'll own that. But I want to go back to this. I forget what you called it, but kind of like this fact, right?
Yeah. Like the interesting data point.
Yes, that's what you said. Interesting data point, because I find that right there is challenging for clients to find. And I'll give an example that my audience will understand, so they know what I'm talking about when I say this. So mine happens to be in the title, but I have a mastermind called Path to 4%. Why is it called that? Because only 4% of businesses online scale to 7 figures, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of woven into the title, which that's not what I think any of you need to do. But can you help them figure out kind of how to get to that? How do they find that?
Yeah, I love that. So we have a client in launch right now. So I'll use her as an example because I've been all over her funnel today. So she is arguing about email marketing, why you need to prioritize email copy. Or email marketing, and a component of that would be copy. So the top part of that sales page comes through the message and helping them remember and understand, like, you're putting all this effort into social media posts and PR and relationships and all this, but like, do you realize you have a direct line to your customers that's algorithm proof and nobody else owns if you can invest in email marketing and double down there? So when we're talking about the data points, we're going to bring in the facts about how much the ROI is on, like, and that's, if you can put it into a component that your audience can understand, especially if you can make them pause and do the math That's really good. That's like when you start to get into, again, psychologically Socratic methodology, where the Socratic style of teaching is when that teacher just is really annoying and asks questions, and all of a sudden you draw the conclusion on your own. That's kind of what you want to coax your audience to do on your sales page. So some of the data points that we pull in at that point on the page are talking about how email just is a lot more, you'll hit a lot more ROI there. You'll get $1 per every about $44 spent. People are 17 more times likely to see it. 72% of people prefer to be promoted to in email instead of social media. So you're just giving these data points. And when I say data points, it's easy to run to facts and percentages, which are great. I love them. But I think it's a Mark Twain quote that something about like, so it's a good one. Google like Mark Twain fact or percentage quote. Basically, you can kind of find one for anything you're looking for, and so you can find it to back up something. So what about like social proof? That is a data point. Just any hard, stone cold factual evidence that you have for something that could work. I'll give you another example of a sales page that I wrote for a product that we have, where I'm talking about how AI has come in and changed the game as far as just content is proliferated all that much more. I can say that over and over again, but the factoid that I brought in is all these headlines: Forbes, CNN, Harvard Business Review, fact headlines, screenshots. AI is changing the game. White collar jobs in jeopardy because of AI, blue collar, like all this kind of stuff. It's like I've littered this little section with headlines. That's the data point that I'm trying to show. So I'm just talking about evidence. Anytime, in the movie Elf, when he like goes into the coffee shop and he says, like, best coffee ever. Congratulations, guys, you did it. And like, that's not like, you can't make claims about your offer being so great or so trustworthy or so fantastic if you don't, like, I need you to be able, if you had duct tape over your mouth and I just made you point to things, could you point to things and make your argument? And that's what I'm asking you to do in that data point section.
That's a really good way of thinking about it. If you could not say a single word,
could you sell? Would it sell? That's a really good exercise to do for yourself. Like, do you have that much social proof on your website, on your sales pages? Like, I think people sometimes think there's a cap. I don't really know I don't know. Do you feel like sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I've ever been on a page and been like, this is too much proof. Like, I
don't think there's too much proof. I will say I love a really nice, pretty looking sales page. And I know that's not necessary. Like, I'm totally aware that you don't have to have a beautiful sales page, but that's just me. So I've definitely seen some business coaches in particular where there's like just a million videos. And I'm like, this is the
okay, that's a good point. Yes.
But I know what you're talking about. And no, you can't show me too much. I just like how things are presented. So that's, like, for example, I created a montage of testimonials in one video in a section of mine, versus having like a million. So
that's a great point to bring up. Yeah. It's all, how are you presenting that? Are you taking user experience into account?
Yeah. Like, that's part of it. Right. And I don't think you can have too much proof. I just know that I've seen certain sales pages though, where it's just, there's a way to make things look prettier. Or I love when they're like, you may have a ton of screenshots, and I love screenshots, but have like a rolling bar through the middle that just cycles through them or something like that. Right. Versus like a ton, vertically. But that's just a personal preference.
No, I agree. I think, that's, if you can have a design buddy, like I always say, copy dictates design, not the other way around. Like, the message hierarchy and order of the lawyer argument comes into play first. But once you know where those like social proof passes, or what I call them, are going to go, like, make sure you're working with a conversion oriented designer who can help you understand things like that and guide you in the right direction.
Agreed. So I want to dive into headlines, because I find that that's always, and not even just the headline, like the tagline. Everyone has such a hard time with creating the tagline. And I definitely write mine last, but I'm sure you probably do too. But if somebody has a really good offer and they're just not great with the spice and the creativity on the content, right? How do you coach them through building a headline?
Love it. Okay. So, and can you tell me too, when you say tagline, what do you, because people mean different things when they say that. So are you talking about like the value prop of the offer, or like a quippy kind of not descriptive phrase of words that, do you know what I mean? Like,
So when I
just
think
do
of
it.
tagline, it's something that is paired with the title of the program. So for example, like Fitness Coach Academy, the ultimate 16-week course to take you from blank to blank, something like
Love
that.
it. Yes. Okay, perfect. That's to me, yeah, like that. If you, and oh my gosh, you need to be able to spit that out like on a mic, on a hot mic. You've got to be able to have that locked and loaded, practice as much as you can, because having that little that one liner that explains the container of your offer and what you're going to, like the transformation or the differentiating factor. I call it sometimes with my group your onlyness factor. Like why this, especially if there's something comparable out there, and especially if that comparable thing costs less. You need to be able to have that locked and loaded. So there's two separate pieces we're talking about here. As far as the headline, 100% write it last. I never ever write a headline first. So like on a sales page there, and we have a template in the shop of like 35 different headlines, and my team and I actually, I think three out of us use those templates and go through. I had a friend one time, he made himself write 50 headlines a day for 100 days. And there's a lot of structure to classic copywriting formulas and frameworks that works really well. And so if you can push yourself to write, I mean, I'll write at least 20 headlines before I'll be like, I think that's the one that needs to go on the top of the sales page. I'm not a big fan of like super descriptive headlines. The goal of the headline is to push them down the page, just to give them just enough information to where they're intrigued and they want to keep reading. That's the theory, the thought group that I like to go with, because they're going to figure out, especially if you've done your job in message matching and warming them up to land on the page, they're going to understand why they're going there. You need to give them a reason to keep reading once they get there. We have a product, for example, it's called Prime to Launch. And like the headline is the same as the hook. And it's nobody cares about your launch unless you give them a reason to. And so that's the kind of like headline that I'm talking about that kind of makes you, it might help to, sometimes we call them like tough love toasts. Can you give them a moment where they're like, ooh, tell me more? Like to me, that's a good headline that pushes you to keep reading. So to answer your question, you asked like, how do I guide people? I always say, start with frameworks that you know work. There have been people hacking copywriting headlines and frameworks since like you've seen Mad Men, like back in the day. There are tried and true formulas that work. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You could Google it probably and find a list of those. Like I said, we have one. Get a list of those. Understand inside and out your audience's voice and what they need to hear. I call that client and customer voice hacking. You need to be able and have a deep understanding. And I think it's innate for like your audience, you're coaching, you're constantly talking to people and constantly listening. You're on calls all the time. Like your amount of data that you have from just putting your ear to the ground is gargantuan in comparison to how a lot of other people work. So you're sitting on a gold mine, but you need to have like dog whistles in your copy, especially in your headline copy that tells them like, hey, this is your language. So you've got your framework, you've got a super sleuth knowledge of your client customer voice hacking. And then you know what you want to say, you know what your offer is. If you can come to the table with those three ingredients and sit down with some template headlines and just hash out. And I think too, I've focused a lot on this in my membership lately, because I was like, I think I've gone for a long time and not reminded people like your first draft sucks, and that's okay. Like a lot of the people that you think are good writers are just really good editors, and it's gonna be yucky at first and it's gonna be hard. But like because I think a lot of people stop at the like, oh, I suck at this. And you've got to push through that. So that's why, again, another reason I bring up, like, have a list of frameworks and just work through them. Just make yourself do like 20 different headlines. I promise you number 21 is going to be so much better than number 1. And in there somewhere is a headline that you can work with.
And I know we're not talking about like content strategy or copy, like in terms of Instagram captions, but a lot of my clients struggle with the amount of volume they have to produce, right?
Mhm.
And It's very rare that I tell somebody to outsource, Instagram captions and things like that.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
outsource a sales page? Sure. But until you develop your messaging and brand voice, you can't outsource shit.
Freaking yes. Yes. All day. I was that's what when people are like, I'm like, outsource fairy dust does not fix you not being able to tell me what you do and why I should buy from you. Like you have to, you are the CEO. Watch any episode of Shark Tank. They always go on there. You've got to be able to pitch yourself. If you don't know how to do that, it is a completely fixable problem. You can learn how to do that. There's so many great resources out there. And I love that you said that. Cause yeah, I'm like, it doesn't, you can be a quote unquote bad writer and learn enough to be dangerous about copywriting and be pretty dang good at it. And then pay it because copy is expensive. Double down on it. Once the spaghetti sticks to the wall, you see a converting rate. You're like, all right, this is going good. Let's pour gasoline on it. Then it's more fun to invest in. But I love that you said that. You've got to be able to, and that's because you cover sales a lot in your copy or in your content. I think that's something that is a lot of people shy away from, and it's integral to small businesses.
I just think about outsourcing in general, which this is kind of a tangent, but copywriting is always the first thing people want to invest in. And one, they have no idea what the investment is. And two, like I said, that's I don't believe in investing, at least at the level I'm talking about, not like bigger things, but don't hire like a salesperson if you can't sell your offer. Don't hire a copywriter if you don't know how to sell your offer, right? Like that's not going to make sense. And the thing with copy is I think we get so hung up on the fact that we are not good.
Yeah.
We have a like a mindset block, right? Like it's not that you have to be a journalist or have that background or any of those things, but you have to practice. The only way to get through writer's block or to get a framework or to get faster is to literally do it over and over again.
Yep.
I'm just curious if somebody is struggling with messaging or voice, right? Are there any exercises or any tips that you have to just get better at that?
Yeah. I feel like that's the heart of like why I have a YouTube channel and everything. So I feel like, I think there's, that Albert Einstein quote, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. I think a lot of people, and I get it because oh my gosh, I hated sales calls when I first started my business. Cause like I'm a writer by trade. Like oh my gosh, I would never say the price point on the phone. Cause I was like sweating bullets. So I would just like, oh, I got to get off this call. Like I hated it. So I completely understand and empathize that it can be scary, but like I didn't have a choice. I have to learn how to do that. And I did. And then exactly what you said to your point, you do it. I could do sales calls in my sleep now and I love them. But that's one thing. It's like, you're going to get better by doing it and doing exercises that force you to actually pound it out is going to be what's most healthy. So, I think when it comes to voice, I feel like if you, maybe we can grab you some links you can put in the show notes, but some of my favorite exercises to tell people are go through your copy and find like your isms. Like what are your if you were training somebody, if you're training an executive assistant to come on in the business and like handle some customer service pieces or handle communicating and pitching for your brand, what are you going to tell them? Or like, these are the phrases we say, these are the phrases we never say. I would not be caught dead saying this, so please don't. Like those little moments that like, you probably have a mood board for, your color palette and your brand photography that you're giving to your brand photographer. Do you have a mood board for your words though? Do you have like core values and little snippets? If you don't know how to find that, if you're a talker, go listen to some podcast interviews that you've done. Go download your live stream, send them off to a rev.com, somewhere like that, pay $1 a minute for a transcription, get it back, print it out, and go through and highlight any little sticky phrase. Here's another one. If your clients or your customers repeat something back to you that you've said, that is so good. Like the minute they say something back to you, it was apparently sticky enough that it stuck with them. And so that all goes into that word bank. So those are some ways that you can find your voice. And then for those people who are more like data minded and nerdy, you can always take paragraphs of your work and drop it into tools like Hemingway.com. I've got a few other ones listed on my website, and measure like how long are your sentences, usually 17 words long, 5 words long. What vocabulary level do you typically speak on? Like all that kind of stuff you can pocket too. So if you were training somebody to sound like you, your voice is pinned down and on paper.
And I think the easiest way, just for people that are listening to this, one of the first 2 people that we typically hire is like a fitness coaching kind of business is usually a virtual assistant, and then typically somebody in your DMs, like a setter, right?
Yep.
And whenever you're bringing in a setter, I have something that's like a personality quiz, a business profile, right? And so we're doing those things. What emojis do you use? What phrases do you use? What would you never say? Like, how would you sell your offer? And then the way that I train them is go take screenshots of things that you've said that have converted. What turned your audience off, right? Like,
Yes.
you have to know, and don't neglect the unsatisfied customers, because you will learn so much from those people too. I think that those are always learning points. But yeah, I mean, but you're still saying the same thing that I say, and it doesn't matter who I ask or what we're coaching or what we're providing, but you just have to do it and practice it.
Oh my gosh, Taylor, I feel like I was here's like nice spicy take moment, because we're recording this at like 6 p.m. after a work day. But I was talking to my team today. I was like, sometimes I just want to tell people, like, our grandparents like grew their own food and made it. Like you can Google or like YouTube how to figure that out. Like it's just, you just have to figure it out. Like I guess sometimes I'm like, if people knew how much I Googled or YouTubed, it's just, there's an alarming lot of things that I just did really terrible until I could figure it out.
There's
So I'm
nothing
with
you
you on
could
that.
say on here. My podcast is actually listed as
Got the buy.
explicit, which I don't know how I earned that, but it is explicit for whatever reason. But no, that's a recurring theme. And no matter what guest I bring on, I always like to ask, like, how do you get better at this? How do you do that? And the answer is always practice. And
Oh my gosh,
the one takeaway that I like to share with my clients is, you've built that resilience in the gym, right? So for whatever reason,
yeah.
You're cranking out that last rep and your face is really ugly, but you still do it anyway. But the second you feel that discomfort in business, you quit. And that's where you could have gotten a little bit better.
I am like going to steal that and tell people that you said that's so good.
That's
It's
fine.
the same. It's the like ugly face, like get through it. And then the next round of reps is that much easier.
There's just no stamina for discomfort in business. That's the problem, right? And so I just think that when we're talking about copying these sales pages, and I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think a sales page can play a major role, aside from, of course, what you're promoting and your sales practices, but in the actual launch. I'm thinking back to all the launches I've had, and I've had 2 $700,000 launches back to back. I've had six like low 6-figure launches, and it's all been with 2 sales pages that I've honestly just tweaked every so often to kind of keep fresh. Why reinvent the wheel?
Well, I know some people tear the whole thing down. I'm like, what about all the data you gathered and all the conversion rates?
Yep.
Yeah.
No. And that was no ads at the time. And no ticket offers. I just sold the same crap for 4 years. And like, here we are, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. But to your point, like you iterated. Like, I think a lot of times people hear big numbers and they think like that doesn't just happen. It's like, you figured out, you had a hypothesis for what you thought the hook could be. And then the next time you were like, okay, but it needs this little bit of an angle. And then you launched again. And like you said, that's what it takes. And yeah, I think a lot of the people that we look to, you don't see some of their we're coming into their story and not seeing all those ugly iterations or the first rounds that it takes to get there.
For sure. And I think that I always like to tell my clients that perfectionism is literally just procrastination. You're just calling it something different. That's literally what it is. And I don't want anyone to listen to this and think that they need to go run and create a sales page. And we may have different thoughts on this, but for just a one-to-one fitness coaching offer, I don't really think it's totally necessary. Coaches are still building rapport on Instagram, maybe a Facebook group, things like that. But when you're trying to create that next level and take your one-to-one framework and create a one-to-many, that is where that sales page is so important. And to your point earlier, you all have a framework. It's just a matter of articulating that. Like you all have one.
You have one. I love that you said that's, and if you need to hop into a mastermind or get coaching to help you, I have a hard time seeing my own. You don't usually, because you do it so much, you're like, wait, this is hard for people. And I think that's been one thing I feel like I've really benefited from being like having a business coach, is because they're able to be like, wait, that's cool. Tell me more about that, and that's a great point that you bring up. Everybody has, just if you need help figuring it out, help is out there for you to get it.
In too many places, honestly. So I want to ask you kind of a question that may seem silly, but how do you know if your copy is converting?
Numbers, math.
So like, what are you looking at? What are the key KPIs that you would say, hey, if you have a sales page, track these things for sure?
2 to 5% on a sales page. If it can hit more than that, heck yes. So we had a sales page go out in February, converted at 17%. And I was like, that is great. Turning that to warm traffic. If I turn that onto cold traffic, it'll probably reduce by half, which is still over 5. So I should have done that. Have I done it? Nope, not yet. But that's a good 2 to 5%. If you're not hitting that yet, because I get frustrated too sometimes when people are like, it's not working. It's my funnel's not working. The sales page is broken. No one's buying. And I'm like, okay, well, let's pull the stats. How many people have landed there in X day to X day? And they find that number. And then we look at that and I'm like, okay, well, you actually are converting on your sales page. You have a traffic problem. You don't have a conversion problem. You have a traffic problem. There's just simply not enough people seeing this. So that's one benchmark to look at. You mentioned lead magnets and opt-ins earlier. I like those to convert around 40%. And if you don't know how to find a conversion rate, it's basically the number of eyeballs that land there divided by the number of action takers times 100 to get that percentage. So that's how you find that. And you need to, like, those are metrics that you need to measure very often in your business over and over again, like that, because that's your feelings are going to lie all day, every day about, I mean, we know like it's between here and here. Entrepreneurship is a game of like grit and staying in it when you just want to, like, it's like being naked in public every day. And so your feelings are always going to tell you like your sales page sucks, or, so, did you see so-and-so's offer? It looks kind of like yours and it looks maybe a little bit better. Like you're always going to hear all that kind of language, but if you can just bring it down and distill it to stone cold hard metrics and let those guide you, it's just a safer place to land for me.
I actually mentioned this earlier about creating, email sequences, right? If you're going to put an email sequence out there and you never check it to see how it's performing, right? Like that's a problem. You need to see where people are opting in, clicking out of, see how your sales are performing. You're going to be updating headlines constantly, especially if you're running ads to that. Like get ready to change things all the time and don't get attached to your copy.
I love that. Yes. Or your imagery.
Oh yeah, that too. I know. Okay. What would you say is one of your biggest copy pet peeves?
Oh Lord. Long-windedness, saying something the same way 15 times. Like that's the thing, like copy can be long, but say it and then move to the next point and move to the next point. I don't know where I got it from, but I usually have like a 13-word cap on my sentences. And I think there's a lot of, I think it's just because we were trained in a world where you had to like fill that 2-page double-spaced, essay that you had to turn in. So people will like put in words that sound important. Like just say it simply. You don't need a lot of $10 words. Those are like little editing things I fix all the time. What is another one? I know I have probably more.
I don't like when people say authentic.
Ooh, I don't like that.
Authentic is turned into something that I feel like I used to say that though. Like
I know I did in 2016.
Building authenticity.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, it's one of those words that just, I don't know. I would say my pet peeve though isn't just that word. It's And I don't even know if it's a pet peeve or just something that I'm like, come on, give me more. But I get so irritated when I see like vagueness.
Yeah, adjectives, vagueness, like use a
Yeah.
stronger verb and use a stronger noun, and then chop off half that sentence. Big wind up, like you start an email, like get to the point in the email. Like a lot of people, you could remove your first paragraph in an email and I'd still know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. I'm always curious, like pet peeves and different industries.
Yeah.
So
It's funny that we have like the same ones. Do you find like reading out loud kills the majority of my like dumb mistakes like that? Because I do that too.
oh,
I
I
write
read
stuff
out
like that,
loud.
but
Everything I do, I read out loud. Pretty
and
much.
it changes into a different animal of a piece of copy.
And I also, one thing I will say about like the flow, and I would love to know yours too. But people always ask me, okay, how do you like plan and write and whatever? Because I posted something recently about how I wrote like 106 pieces of copy in a day. And everyone was like, how did you do that? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I've got a flow. And I think on a micro level, right? Like, and I know
Yeah.
you too, we're not thinking of like, what do I do today? Let's get it done. And so because I've done so much volume, it's
Yeah.
easy for me to put my fingers on my keyboard and I know the framework. It's just cranking
Yes.
out the words, right? And that's just
Yeah.
repetition, muscle memory, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I don't plan on the same days that I write personally.
Oh no, I love it. No. Yeah.
And I
It's a
find that
different
some coaches
space
try
for
to
me.
cram it. Yeah, exactly. It's a totally
Yeah.
different headspace.
Yeah. Same way I don't do a good job coaching and talking and teaching usually on the same day that I'm trying to like, I don't know, like build something, write something like,
Oh, yeah, no.
yeah, yeah. It's like a front stage, backstage kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yep. I have in business and on business days, and that is how they stay
Mhm.
separated. And I don't do back to
Mhm.
back coaching days. And that is how I've always
Yes.
structured my stuff. So, yeah,
Yes. Very
I
similar.
honestly like doing writing on the weekends. I was talking to my clients about this
Yeah.
earlier because on the weekends, I'm not talking to my team or my clients, and it's just
Yep.
I'm not bothered. I can, go to a
Yes.
coffee shop or just have a quiet moment to myself. And that's where my creativity
Yes.
is, on point. But that's so interesting. If you had if somebody has a sales page and they're listening to this and they are maybe launching something and it's their first launch, what is the one thing that they should go look at on their sales page to either make sure they have or don't have?
That's great. Okay. First of all, I'll back up one. I'll give two. One, just make sure people want it. I was scrolling Twitter and I saw something and it's like, if no one's willing to, of course it was like Alex Hormozy or somebody like that, but if nobody's willing to put money down on something, you just have an expensive hobby. So first launch, and I'm saying that because you mentioned first launch. And sometimes people will go through all the trouble of like building something like, but did people want this? Like, I know they said they wanted it. Have you gotten people to pay for this before? Like, and now after we know that, we built the sales page for it. I would say an offer overview that's very detailed. Like, I want the Aladdin magic carpet view of what is inside. And that's it. When you write a sales page, I don't know if you do this. I always start with the offer itself, like the meat and the potatoes of the offer.
Yes, I start with what I know.
What I know, like I'm going to throw myself the softest ball possible to hit out of the ballpark. So I'm going to give myself like, well, at least I know what is in this offer. And so I think if you can type through that and get that really clear, that's the first piece of it. I would say that I am completely ignoring your rule here. I'm going to give one more. Socratic method. I talked about Socratic methodology earlier, but like help them understand, put the pricing in terms that they can break down. What their money's gonna be spent somewhere. Where else is it gonna go? Call that out. If you can address the elephant in the room and say the thing that they're thinking but not saying, you're like that you're gonna win. You can win the attention that way. You're gonna win the attention if you can say something better than they can say it. Like if you can say what's going on in their head better than they can, you're going to win the attention and win the dollar. But the same with, if you can break down the pricing, we see it all the time with somebody saying that's like 4 Starbucks a month. Like that same concept on your sales page can really help people be like, okay, like I'm going to spend this money
Price
somehow.
anchoring.
Yeah.
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 So
You've got to have it.
underutilized, I
Yeah.
think I had an offer one time. It was fitness. So it was a very long time ago, but it was like the transformation they were going to get was $3 a day. And I was like, this is less than, your favorite cup of coffee. And that was so much more manageable than, $500, even though that wasn't really
Yes.
crazy, but yeah.
Especially because like the nature of what y'all do, you're not helping people make more money. So like people that are helping people make money kind of have an easy win because they can price anchor against the ROI. But like y'all don't. So you've got to get exactly what you said. You've got to get a little bit more creative. And I've seen people do that. I saw a mom, she like teaches moms and coaches moms. She was like, that's like one Madewell shirt, and I'm like, that's good. Like that's your audience. But
It's less
yeah,
than your
that
Stanley Cup. Okay. So,
ducks for cover. Mine's in the other room right now.
oh, mine's like a nice little Amazon $20 dupe that I've had for 4 years before Stanley was a thing. And now I feel like I have a fake one. It's so irritating. I'm
Oh
like,
my
no,
gosh,
I've had
you're
this for
ahead
a
of the
long
curve.
time. But yeah,
Great.
I don't see that people use price anchoring. And I think that it would be even aside from a sales page, just when like you're marketing or on your stories or any of those things. And I'm sure you could talk about this as well, but don't rely on your sales page alone to do all the work. That's
Oh,
the
heck
one mistake
yes.
I see a lot too.
Yes. Yeah. If you're in your sales page should be like copy should be sustainable. You need to be able like it's the modus operandi. It's the thing at the end of the funnel that all roads lead there. But you've got to be able to pull out nuggets and disseminate them across the internet. Hooks, lines, quips, phrases, little like that copy has to be able to be repurposed. Because once you do have your sales page in place, like good, pull video scripts from that sucker, pull email copy from that sucker. Like don't make it hard on yourself.
Yeah, repurposing, that could be another podcast episode. I mean, the
Mhm.
amount of copy that you are all producing right now, and I just like you're sitting on so much, especially if you have a podcast out or a blog,
Mhm.
or if somebody asked me how I'm posting twice a day because I do a video every day and then some kind of a carousel.
Love
Every
it.
single thing I write in terms of a carousel post turns into a video for the next month. And I
Oh
just
my gosh, brilliant. Yeah.
I just don't do a
Brilliant.
caption for it. It's
Yeah.
so easy.
We
Um,
think everybody is like, and like, even if people are absorbing all of your stuff and they're like massive Taeler fangirls, we absorb information in different ways. And like, I need to hear things so many times before it sinks in. So, yeah.
awesome. Cool. Is there anything else I should have asked you that I didn't that you wanted to share about sales page, launches, anything?
I don't think so. I have a lot of feelings about it. I do always like, I want people to know if you're stuck writing something, like reach out. I probably have a freebie or a video how to on it at this point. I know we've been in business probably about the same amount of time. Like we've got some resources out there and I love that you brought it up. I didn't even bring it up. You've got to be able to do this on your own and you're completely capable of doing it. Like I always think about it was the numbers in business that I was like, there's no way I'd ever be able to like look at a P&L statement and like be able to see trends in it, but I figured it out. I can do it. And feel the same way about I know some people feel that way about writing and you can figure it out. So don't get stuck, reach out.
Don't get stuck, reach out. That's really
Yeah.
the ending phrase. Yeah.